Next up, we'll hear from a man who is the definition of transformation, and he should give every single one of us hope. He's a former neo-Nazi and KKK leader who'll discuss his journey from being a white supremacist to becoming a peace activist. T.M. Garrett.
Thank you, Michael. I really think that Stand With Us is doing so important work, and so I didn't hesitate long when I was asked to be a speaker at the 2022 annual Stand With Us International Conference. This year, due to known reasons, unfortunately only virtually. I'm not sure if you have looked me up before the conference, but I'm not the usual speaker you would expect for a conference like this. And I'm gonna tell you why. Today, I'm a human rights activist who's working with numerous groups in the Black and Jewish community. I'm also the director of an organization that helps individuals leave extremist groups, such as hate groups. And I'm also an extremism researcher at the International Center for the Study of Violent Extremism. So you could say my business is for the love of people, but it hasn't always been like that. Until about 20 years ago, my business was hating people. I was a neo-Nazi, anti-Semite, a racist, and a Holocaust denier. Wait, what? Yes, you heard right. But isn't that quite a change? And many ask, can people change that drastically? And if so, how is it possible? And what does it take? So many of us have seen friends and neighbors become conspiracy theorists in the last years and wonder how normal people can seemingly overnight turn into paranoid actors who are expecting a world conspiracy behind everything. But make no mistake, people who are going this way are neither stupid nor born as violent extremists, and they also didn't change overnight. Just as people who are trapped in extremist organizations, cults, or hate groups are also not simply changing overnight back. I know what I'm talking about. I was one of them. Now, I was actually worse. But let's do a little time traveling to get to the bottom of this, so bear with me. I was born in a little conservative German town in 1975, and when I say little, I mean little. Like 500 citizens, my family just had moved there, and they were full of problems. There were Catholics in a predominantly Protestant town. There were the newbies that had a different dialect. They had a heavy drinking problem, and just around the time when I was born, they divorced. And we're talking about 1975. That was a no-go back then. So my family were the outsiders, and that also carried over to me as well as a child. So my mom just tried to raise me and get me through school. She always provided material things, but I didn't know who I was, why I was the unplanned child, or why I wasn't a priority somehow. I was the kid with fancy clothes, while the others were polo shirts and jeans. I had that weird haircut and those glasses you get bullied for, and yes, I was bullied a lot. I was a perfect victim for bullies. My mom, she meant well. But how little did I know that she was fighting her own demons? But then again, how would I fit in this world? So I was the bullied kid that he could push around, looking for a purpose and identity. I wanted to be somebody so bad. And then just around the time when boys are discovering their masculinity, like the age of 13, we learned about World War II, Hitler, the Nazis, and the Holocaust in school. Some of the older kids were cracking Hitler jokes, racist, Islamophobic, and anti-Semitic jokes, and I picked them up too. I was good at telling jokes, so it brought me some of the wanted attention that I craved for, but it also got me in a lot of trouble. And I always was a little extreme. So I took it to the next level. I made a comic book out of all these jokes, drew them down, and all of a sudden, I was known as the Nazi kid in school. I was put in this box. The kid did something anti-Semitic, so he must be an anti-Semite and a Nazi, right? Looks like it. So they closed the lid of that box and labeled me, and no one seemed to care for the boy inside anymore. They all just cared for the label. I didn't want to wear this label. I was like, I'm sticking out my hand out of this box, crying for help, but all I could see were judging and pointing fingers, but I needed that hand that would help me and pull me out of that box. I mean, I felt so misunderstood. I didn't know anything about neo-Nazis or skinheads. I thought the Nazis died in 1946 in Nuremberg. I made fun of Hitler too. How could I be a Nazi? I didn't understand, but no one listened. No one cared about how intentional or unintentional it was what I did. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to play it down. It was clear that I did something that was very racist, Islamophobic, and anti-Semitic. But it wasn't for the intent to hate. I didn't know anything about that all of that. So, but once again, it seemed that no one cared. So I started to pick up more and more attributes of the extremist far right. My identity shifted from the joke teller Nazi kid to the far right proud German. Here comes one of the tricky parts. You have grandparents that are still alive whom you love, but then you're forced to wonder whether they have been involved in any atrocities in World War II, maybe the Holocaust. That's nothing a 13-year-old wants to be confronted with, nor even would understand. It's tricky. Then another kid in school gave me a cassette tape with hate music. The softcore version that'll lure me in. That's how recruiters of extremist groups always work. They feed you with something that would resonate with you and then gradually raise that level. And I always loved music, so I was hooked. But with every cassette tape, that music, the lyric got more hateful, and slowly I got more hateful too. And it's called mere exposure. You start liking what you see every day, especially when it comes from a supposedly trusted source, and that was trusted to me. Or like Ovid said 2,000 years ago, dripping water hollows out stone, not through force but through persistence. Our brains slowly build these neural pathways, and we literally get hardwired. And one day I wanted to get to know these people that were singing these lyrics. I found them at a county fair, and the next day I came home with a shaved head. It looked like it happened overnight, but it wasn't. And my journey wasn't over either. It takes a while to walk 10 miles into a forest, and I wasn't nearly there yet. So I joined that group, climbed up the ranks, I got myself a guitar, started writing lyrics, and I recorded albums, traveled all over Europe and the US to play my music and those hateful lyrics. And first it was about the skinhead subculture only. The xenophobic aspect wasn't based on any particular ideology, but merely on fear of losing out and provoking. So it was still more about just getting attention provoking. But when I joined the NPD, a German extremist far-right party with connections to neo-Nazis, they told us that the foreigners are overflowing the country, that the parasites and Germans must come first. That's when the ideology kicked in. And they also had a solution for the problem we had with our grandparents. They claimed the Holocaust never happened. Our grandparents weren't criminals committing a genocide, but they were heroes defending our country. Problem solved. And then on the internet, that was 1998, the internet was just exploding. Someone told me to read this book that will explain everything. The Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And I know, it is what you call today fake news. It was a pamphlet made up in Russia in 1903 by anti-Zionists and anti-Semites to stir hate against Jews. It presented the Jews as an overpowerful force and enemy who's planning to take over the world, and the only thing standing between them and world domination was the white race. Oh, now I understood. This is why Hitler hated the Jews. According to this book, the Jews are all behind everything, all evil in this world. They were the ultimate evil, and we are the good ones. It felt like I found the Holy Grail. And I had the chance to protect myself and my people against this enemy like a superhero. And to be honest, which kid doesn't want to be a superhero? And saving everyone. Sure, give me a cape, of course. So my identity switched again from the provoking skinhead to nationalist and national socialist and Holocaust denier. You see this step-by-step radicalization? Then in 1998, same year, I joined a German faction of the KKK. As before, I climbed up the ladder and became the leader of that European KKK group. And while I was on the top of this career in that movement, I said before, Germany has done a great job after World War II to put its finger on this problem very, very tight. And since we switched to recruit business people and police officers very successfully for membership, the authorities had a very close eye on us. And I remember the intelligence service one time visited me and made clear that if one of my members would commit a violent crime, I would go to prison. That was scary because I realized I'm not in control of them. We were not the hippies preaching peace and love. I got scared, so I made a decision and stepped down from my offices, my leadership, and left the group. Me and my family decided to move to another town to get away from that. And that's a really, really difficult decision because that was something I was afraid of anyway, starting over new. So we're running away. Don't get me wrong, I only got my head out of the hate group. The hate was still in my head though. And I remember when I called that number for the only apartment in the classifieds that we could find. And the guy picked up the phone and he had a very heavy Turkish accent. And he also lived in the house in the apartment downstairs. And I was like, really? The only place available and it's owned by a Turkish Muslim immigrant? So I started lying to myself. It's just temporary. I'll find something else. No, but I didn't. I was stuck. And of course, I kept running into the guy all the time. We shared the same hallway. And I really wanted to hate him so bad. But he just kept being nice, showing nothing but that stupid unconditional love. I was still in warrior mode and wanted to fight. I wanted him to hate me back. And I thought love is for hippies. And one day he invited me for dinner. I said yes. That was a big, big step. I guess being around him became sort of normal. And I remember that I expected him to be so mad when he brought the appetizer. I didn't like the appetizer. It was fish soup. I can't stand it. I heard in the culture you better don't reject food. They might be really, really offended. But it wasn't a big deal. And everything was so different than I expected. The entree was chicken and fries. What happened to couscous and falafel? What, chicken and fries? That's so normal. But who am I to decide what's normal? All of a sudden, my hate started to crumble. And I couldn't hate that man. He loved his kids just as I loved mine. He worried about his future just as I worried about mine. He liked good music, a good movie. He liked chicken and fries. The commonalities were just so much more than what I thought, what puts us apart. His nationality and his beliefs became secondary to me. All I saw was just a human being who showed me something I thought I didn't deserve at the time. Compassion and unconditional love. So I needed to find out more. Germany has a big Turkish community, and guess what? When I got to know them, they're just human beings. They all like chicken and fries. Then I moved to Memphis 12 years later in 2012. I discovered the black community, and guess what? They were just like me too, and they also like chicken and fries. And then I discovered the Jewish community, and they also like chicken and fries. Well, sometimes kosher, but they like chicken and fries. I realized we all are not that different. It took me a long time to get rid of all the stereotypes I believed in. Even stereotypes I found normal people believed in. And every time I actually decided to find out and to sit down with said community, I found out that we all have so much more in common and that we're not that different. Let me tell you 2 important stories before I let you go. I remember my first time I attended a service at a synagogue, Erev Yom Kippur 2019. It was a very warm welcome, even though everybody knew who I was. And I wore a kippah and I had a transliteration so I could pray. And after the service, I remember somebody walked up and asked, TM, tell me about anti-Semitism in Germany. And I was so proud that I could tell them. Germany has done a great job making up for it, reflecting, making sure it must never happen again. There's no danger coming anymore from Germans. The next day, I turned on the phone just to find out that a German neo-Nazi had attacked the synagogue in Halle, Germany. And I felt like a liar because of what I have told these people yesterday. And then as I kept thinking, another very uncomfortable feeling came up. If somebody would have violently entered the synagogue to murder everybody inside who was praying, well, I looked like a Jew. I prayed like a Jew. I would have been dead. And for the very first time, I knew how it feels not to feel safe because you're part of a minority group. I felt so numb and helpless. And I didn't have an answer. What I always can bring hope with my story when I talk. I was still trying to find out what we can do when we feel helpless like this. So let me tell you the last story that you can take home, or if you're at home, you can ponder on this tonight, okay? It's a story that gave me the answer. Also to my own story. I remember when I was on a speaking tour just before COVID hit in 2020. I was talking to a small lunch group that was led by a rabbi. And before I spoke, the rabbi had to share a little story because it just had happened a couple of days before that, and it was very timely. And I remember after he was done, I said, I don't need to share my story anymore. You just explained it in a few minutes. It was the story of a young woman, a college student at the University of Michigan, whose mezuzah was stolen. Of course, she realized that it was very intentional, and she wondered if she had become a victim of an antisemitic attack. So the perpetrator was found, and she decided to sit down with him rather than pressing charges. She sat down? So during the meeting, she asked him if he would take a tour at the Holocaust Museum, and he agreed. And he also compensated her for the stolen mezuzah. So instead of pressing charges, she decided to sit down. What we can learn here is that we all have a great power. Whenever our community, actually any community, is under attack, and we feel numb and helpless, we have the great power to decide what happens to these individuals in those boxes. And that young man who stole the mezuzah was in that box. Everybody thought he was an anti-Semite and a Nazi. And we have two choices. We can either open the box, look at the human being inside, pull the human being out, put him back on track, or we wait until the guys with the swastikas and the white hoods will do it. We will never know, but maybe this student has saved that young man from becoming the next synagogue shooter. This is the great power we have. So you may have realized that I said our community several times, and yes, you heard right. After a long journey looking for an identity and a long journey getting to know Judaism, I'm now in the process to convert to Judaism. Thank you.